Hello, this is Dave Sugarbaker, and today is August 10th, 2025. And I have a section of the book of Mark I'd like to share with you. This is from Mark 6. When Jesus landed, he had been in a boat. When he had landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. "This is a remote place," they said, "and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "That would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat?" "How many loaves do you have?" he asked. "Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them as well. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. Last week, someone noticed the lapel button that I was wearing, and I was asked about it. I'm wearing it right now. I said, "Oh, that's from the Berkeley Breakfast Club. It was a remarkable organization, and I'm proud to have been a part of it." I didn't have time to describe the BBC at that point, so I'm going to do it today. The Berkeley Breakfast Club was founded in the 1930s and met every Friday morning at 7 a.m. To be a member, you had to live and or work in Berkeley. The BBC had a limit of 200 members, and most showed up every Friday morning for breakfast and a speaker. We were always done by 8:30, and everyone would hurry off to work. In prior years, the BBC had been entirely male, but that barrier had become unpopular, and by the time I was a member of the club, we had some women members, I think perhaps a dozen. There was a fine for anybody who promoted his or her business at breakfast. It just wasn't done. But on the other hand, if a member had an interesting job or a role in bringing something new to Berkeley, he or she could get to speak to the whole group. We met at a large restaurant on the Berkeley waterfront. After I left town for Kentucky, the club moved to the Berkeley City Club, a beautiful Julia Morgan building. She was an architect. She also did Hearst Castle. The Berkeley City Club was near the campus of the University of California, so they had moved. When I'm in Berkeley these days, on a Friday morning, I make it a point to visit the BBC. The Breakfast Club had a president who served for a year, and the president presided over the weekly meetings. And then at the end of a year, the president was impeached. He was demoted and thrown out of office. And the next week, a new president would just kind of appear. One ousted president was flown by helicopter from Berkeley to San Francisco to the airport, where he was relieved of his wallet and left to figure out how he was going to get back to Berkeley. He outfoxed everybody, and he was back in Berkeley in an hour. Another hapless president was hauled off in an animal control truck and chained to a light pole in downtown Berkeley, left there to explain to people who might come along just what was he doing chained to a light pole in downtown Berkeley. I learned over time that there was a board of directors who really held all things together. I served on that board for perhaps 6 years or so. There were about a dozen of us, and we met periodically at the faculty club of the University of California. This is where the planning was done. This group of directors chose the club presidents, and sometimes if it was known that a member was having a hard time at his job, the club would give him a boost by making him the president of the club for the next year. It was a real status thing to be the president of the Berkeley Breakfast Club. The web of acquaintances and connections for 200 Breakfast Club members was really an impressive thing, and consequently we had some really outstanding speakers. Robert McNamara, Secretary of Defense, spoke one Friday, and we heard the medical director of the Haight-Ashbury Clinic speak on some of his most unusual experiences. One week we heard from an author who lived in Berkeley who had borrowed my name from the sign in front of the church at Northbury Community Church. There was my name for everybody to see. And she borrowed my name for one of the characters of one of her mystery novels. I never discovered whether my character in her novel was one of the good guys or one of the bad guys. Never have read the book that she wrote. We also had some terrible speakers. There was a prize given at the end of the year to the member who had brought in the worst speaker of the year. The prize was a dried cow patty under glass. Club members were always polite to the speaker, good or bad. Only later would we poke fun at the member who had brought in the poor speaker. Our members included faculty and administration from the University of California and business and professional people from the city of Berkeley and people who worked for the city of Berkeley itself. But we had some of the sharpest minds and quickest wits in Berkeley. The repartee was fast and sharp. If a member of the Berkeley Breakfast Club was the speaker for a given Friday, it was open season. I know I gave one talk to the club on some of the crazy things that had happened during some of my weddings, including the poodle in a tuxedo who escorted the mother of the bride down the aisle before the wedding started. But I did my speech, and it was one of the best audiences that I have ever spoken to. They were sharp, they were funny, they were involved, and I did not get the dried cow patty for the year. The club made a little bit of profit on each breakfast, and they also had dues they collected each year from every member, and that all added up. Once a year, the BBC hosted the Cal Band for breakfast, and there was a good percentage of the University of California alumni in the group, and they loved singing some of the Cal fight songs with the band blasting away. The club gave a sizable donation to the band each year to help with the band program and for scholarships. One of the best compliments that one could get from associated with this wild and slightly crazy bunch was being perceived as a good guy. After 6 years or so, I achieved the status of good guy, and I felt like I had arrived somehow. I was asked to do a funeral service for a past president of the club, a former engineering professor at Cal. And the funeral service took place on a boat under the Golden Gate Bridge, floating on the bay. We scattered his ashes while some of the old alums sang the Cal fight song. I did a wedding for another member, and it was a real honor to be asked. But for years after that, the groom would point me out to new members of the club and say, "It's all his fault. He got us hitched." 2 words come to mind as I remember the Berkeley Breakfast Club: humor and compassion. It was quite a group. What does it mean to be compassionate. It means to have mercy, to feel sympathy, and to have pity. Another definition is to suffer with others who are suffering. I don't think compassion is going away. I saw an interview on late night TV. Somebody was saying that there's a compassion deficit these days. Nobody's getting worked up about the problems or plight of anybody else. But I don't think that's the case. I think instead we may be suffering a kind of secondhand PTSD. Just listening to the news can put us in overload. There are so many awful things going on. It seems like every news cycle brings another round of injustice, suffering, and cruelty. There's war and starvation in Gaza and in Darfur, and probably in some other places in the world. There's the end of the PEPFAR program and the prospect of many, many deaths to come in poor nations. And we can feel as a result of just watching the news that we can feel a kind of compassion fatigue. Now, what's compassion fatigue? What are the symptoms? Lowered concentration, numbness, feelings of helplessness, irritability, lack of self-satisfaction, withdrawal, exhaustion, anger, or a reduced ability to feel empathy. If that's the compassion deficit that this late night interviewee was talking about, it really is more compassion fatigue. We're worn out from hearing all of the bad news. For me, it's a pretty good summary of what it's like for me to watch the evening news. But we who are trying to be children of God are asked to emulate our spiritual parent. God is compassionate. We are to be compassionate. We are to understand the suffering of others. We're to empathize with the starving, with the dispossessed and the dying. We are to do what we can to ameliorate the suffering and starvation. We are to reach out to those who are like sheep without a shepherd, just like our spiritual parent. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. Jesus had compassion on the crowd that had followed him out into the countryside. He saw them as lost, like sheep without a shepherd. So he did something about it. He taught them many things. Then, as the hour got late, they were hungry, and with no McDonald's nearby. Jesus, ever compassionate, didn't just offer them his thoughts and prayers. He organized a feast. We don't know how he did it, but he saw people in need and proceeded to meet that need. That's what compassion is, feeling the needs of others. Being compassionate is one of the character traits of the children of God. So God bless you today. Thank you for taking your time to listen to this. And if you find value here, I appreciate it if you'd pass it along. So, take care. God bless. I'll see you soon.